Hi, my name is Bruce Bolger, and I'm founder of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance. And we're a 16-year-old organization now dedicated to helping organizations optimize returns for their investors only by creating value for their customers, their employees, their supply chain and distribution partners, and their communities. And part of our whole program is to focus on the how. If you decide to run your organization based on a clear purpose, goals, objectives, and values that are transparent to all, how do you actually implement that in your meetings, in your incentive programs, in your communications, in your HR, in your learning, in your finance? We're all about helping organizations take advantage of the new concept of stakeholder management, and which is really, I should say, total quality management for people. And today we're focusing on a new series that we've created with Jaki Baskow, and I'm sorry her name is wrong on that screen, but her name is Jaki Baskow, and she's CEO and founder of Baskow Talent. And she helped us come up with the idea of this new series specifically related to one of the most powerful communications tools for any stakeholder-oriented organization, and that's meetings and events, because that is where you get everybody together to focus on the common purpose, goals, and objectives and values. And through this program, we're bringing in experts and people who've been doing this for years, like Mark Kamp, otherwise known as Marvellous Mark. And he's got a wonderful story to tell and a way of telling it. But it all gets down to the brass tacks of how to build relationships across the enterprise. And that's why I gave him the tagline here, Silo Buster, only because we had a conversation before the show, several weeks ago, and it was clear that what you can do using Mark's services, and he's going to get to it in a few minutes, is to break down the silos that stop us from harmonizing the interests of all of our stakeholders. So, just a quick little bit of housework. Obviously, our company has a lot of customers. We value them. Without them, we can't take the time to create shows like this to help you improve your business. And then, of course, we are stakeholder capitalists. We give a lot away. You never have to spend one penny with our organization to learn how to implement total quality management for people, or at least the framework. So, with that, I'm going to stop the share here. And we've got Jaki there. So, I'm going to start with Jaki. You recommended that we bring in Mark for this program. I'm interested. Why? What made you say, Mark, you got to bring in Mark for this?
Well, good morning, everybody. One of my reasons for loving to hire Mark, and not because he's on this podcast, he is one of my favorite speakers. He creates energy in the room. When you walk into a ballroom, people are like, oh, we're at another general session. There's going to be another speaker here or whatever. Mark comes, the clients customize the drumsticks with the name of their company on it. Everybody has the drumsticks, and he'll go into that in a little bit. Everybody's drumming and making noise, and the energy and just the whole camaraderie of creating the team in 5 minutes with the unity that's going on in the room. And then Mark comes on and he gives them this memorable, inspiring message and talks about how everybody in that audience is a rock star. And it gives people a purpose, and makes people feel good. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Mark so Mark can tell you a little bit about his meetings.
Yeah, Mark,
Thanks,
I
Jackie.
actually wanted to ask you in a sense, when you and I spoke, we spoke about obviously this whole concept of changing the nature of meetings, making them more meaningful, doing things that we can't do on a Zoom. So tell us, what do you try to accomplish for your clients at your events to reinvent, in a sense, meetings?
Well, Bruce, I don't necessarily think it's reinventing. I think it's more giving it more meaning and purpose. In my speaker demo, in the first 10, 15 seconds, my line is no one remembers a boring meeting. So when corporations and companies and associations are spending thousands to bring their people together for a purpose, which you mentioned earlier in your introduction, doesn't it make sense that you want your meetings to be memorable? And then there's a lot of science and psychology on how engagement, interactivity and drumming releases dopamine and oxytocin, which is that feel good hormone that, for whatever reason, it's subconscious, makes everyone feel better and makes your meetings more memorable. So I've always, as a 30-year touring entertainer, I've always been that person, that energy person, as Jaki says, that loves that energy and excitement. But I can also deliver some content that will be easily applied for them to take away with.
Well, as Jackie knows, one of our very big emphasis in this meaningful meeting series is how can we do things you can't do in a Zoom? Because, like this is a panel discussion today that in the past we would have traveled hundreds of miles to attend, spent $1,800 for a registration fee, and now you can get great people like you who are generous with your time to share your wisdom. So, what are the types of things that you like to do or urge clients to do to make their meetings more meaningful on site? And again, I want to get to the silo thing and harmonizing interests because ironically, harmonizing interests, drumming.
Well, I mean, I like to create an experience, and Jaki, when she pitches me to her clients, she'll say that Mark's not just a speaker; he's an experience, and you create this whole ensemble. But there are certain things that I've used through the years that I've learned as an MC and as an entertainer, and a lot of my inspiration came back in the mid to late 90s when I was a guru of Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins was a master of incorporating music and energy and interaction in his giant conferences and seminars. And when I saw how the people responded to that, that's what really was a turning point or a pivotal point for me on how can I do that with my audiences. And then I kind of was tagged the Pied Piper of fun or the motivational MC until I reinvented as a speaker. But I try to touch every sense for every person in that audience, whether you're left brain or whether you're right brain. The drumming is a great way that you can have a room full of engineers that are not the best at having fun, and you put drumsticks in their hands and they become 5-year-olds beating on the tables and having a lot of fun. I use Q&A. I use audience response. I use step and repeat from slides and quotes on the stage. Any way that I can engage and interact with an audience, I incorporate it all in one presentation. And you just can't do all of those things on a Zoom or a virtual video call.
Well, Jackie made a point at the beginning of this session that I thought was really key. People don't, they think, oh, I'm walking into an auditorium, another general session. I'd rather be talking with my colleagues out over on the golf course or playing tennis or at the pool. No, I have to come into a dark auditorium. So your background, if I recall, is entertainment. So how do you apply entertainment to achieving an organizational purpose, goals, and objectives? In other words, you said memorable. Well, I like the idea of bringing in somebody who can help remind everybody of what our organizational goals and purposes are that we all have in common. What is the type of purpose that you bring to an event, or can you bring to an event to help a company walk away with something constructive?
Well, I think the key word that you said there, Bruce, is to walk away. I mean, so many times when you bring in a speaker, they can get you engaged or jazzed up for a certain period of time. But then what happens when you leave the conference? What happens 3 days, 5 days, 7 days after you leave the conference? Going back to the whole dopamine and oxytocin quote, that embeds it in your subconscious. And when it creates triggers. So the audience members take these drumsticks home with them and they're branded with the corporate event on them. So I challenge them to take them back to their desk, to their office, and review their notes and put in their earbuds, and we talk about what your anthem is. And I tell them, drum on the table, drum in your cubicle, drum on the tray in the on your flight to your next event or to your next program. And that releases those memory hormones that will actually trigger different parts of the presentation for them to take away with. And the bonus for the meeting planner or for the CEO is that it's not just my presentation, it's all the other presenters that follow me, because they're all going to be drumming the rest of the day, because I empower those people up on the stage to do callbacks with their drumsticks to create that release.
Can't hear you.
Anthem. Yeah, that really struck me. You said anthem. Tie that in. Is it their own personal anthem, or do you actually kind of recommend an organization create a collective anthem? Or
Both,
am I reading
actually.
that too literally?
No, both actually. Just like, they play the national anthem at a sporting event, and it unifies the whole audience. Everyone is coming together, with one purpose in mind, and that is, showing love of country or patriotism, all singing the national anthem. Well, usually a company will have some sort of theme, and they'll tie in some sort of song or anthem with that theme that they play throughout. So there again, that's a trigger that's going to help be memorable for the attendees. And then personally, I say we all have our own anthem, whether it's what we're singing in the shower, what we listen to in the morning, or for me personally, I have different categories of anthems. So if I need to get pumped up for a creative moment, then I play a certain song. If I need to just get pumped up to go to the gym, I play a different type of song. But we all, whether we realize it or not, we all have some sort of personal anthem or favorite song that will unify us and help us regroup. And that's, music is international language. And when we start talking about breaking down silos and barriers, that's a key element of breaking down those silos with music.
I love these shows, Jackie. Look what we've learned. This is our second show,
Yes.
and wait until you see what we learned from the first about a new definition of the golden rule, right? And now, do you know, in my 50 years in business, I have never really thought of an anthem in the way you're discussing it, and how really important that can be, because music is a unifier, right? It's something, and it's also helps different cultures express themselves. So really what you're saying is that you can build not just drumming, which of course is universal, right? Who doesn't thump on their whatever, right? Even my wife every once in a while. So really, you're really saying is that music can be a powerful unifier and a powerful storyteller.
Yeah,
Bruce,
I
I would
mean,
like to just chime in.
go ahead,
Oh,
Jackie.
Please.
go ahead, Mark. I just want to chime in on something that I really, I see a million speakers, and I feel that I can pitch everything about Mark because I love what he speaks about, just like I love Jim Morrison behind you. What makes somebody legendary? And he talks about, he shows a slideshow. What makes somebody legendary? He shows the band Kiss. What makes a grunge garage band put makeup on? Like, who thought of that and becomes the most iconic brand in the world? What makes your brand, iconic? What makes you different from your competitor? And he compares that. He compares about Steve Jobs. Everything in there I took with me, but Mark, the past 10 years, and I still remember it. And if you remember something that a speaker is telling you and it gets embedded in your soul, he's done his job. And I love that he uses the rock and roll and icons in that, in that way to pitch people about thinking about what are you doing that makes yourself different. When I call you or give a cold call to you, why are you taking my call? What's my brand? How am I selling my brand to you? Mark, you
Well,
can
let's
chime
get
in
into
on
that.
this.
Let's get right into that. So, Mark, how do you make sure, at the end of the day, I've been to more events than I want to, and I don't remember most of the speakers. I do not. But I remember one 40 years ago from Wharton University who told me the most powerful word in the most powerful thing. If you want to get anything done, if you have a customer service problem, anything, you ask for help. I had never thought of that. But he said help is a natural. 99% of people, when they hear that word help, like even in New York City, open up a map if you still have a map, and people will come right up to you and say, "Oh, can I help you?" Right? Even in New York City. So, Mark, how do you make sure that you're not just entertainment? that, you know, that you leave that impression that you left on Jaki 10 years ago that aligns with what the company is trying to, or the company that's paying you or organization. How do you make sure that that impression you leave supports what they're trying to accomplish?
Well, it's all part of a blend of finding that balance between entertainment and education. Someone came up with the word, I can't take credit for it, but you know, a lot of people use the word edutainment, and that really speaks to me because there's no golden rule, as you were mentioned earlier, that says you can't have fun at a meeting. In fact, you know, there's a lot of data that the Googles and the Monsters of the world that incorporate fun in the workplace and fun in their meetings have a higher performance level from their people. So there's got to be something there to find that happy medium or happy balance. But you know, when Jackie's talking about being memorable, one of the questions when I'm having a call with a new prospect or a client is I'll ask them, I'll say, hey, who was the speaker that you had last year? And if they have to stutter around or they can't think of it without looking it up, I'm like, bam, you know, I can promise you that if you use me for your event, your people will remember me. And that's the way that you want your company to be. What sets your business apart from everybody else? I think it was Jeff Bezos that said your brand isn't what people say in front of you. Your brand is what people say about you after you leave the room. And, you know, what are people saying about you? And you got to keep in mind that besides the company as a whole, their brand, each of us have a personal brand. Just like my personal brand for Jaki is fun and engagement and interactivity
And loving.
and loving. And what
I
as I
mean
mean,
it.
Jackie's brand is the queen of Las Vegas. I mean, she was one of the first ever in the city to open up a talent and entertainment agency, and because of that, all I'll say is if you could see the list in her phone of people that she has on speed dial, it would blow your mind. And people still remember her, and people always call her when they think about entertainment and speakers, especially when they come to Las Vegas.
Thank you, Mark. You know, and not be, like I said, because we're engaging in conversation, but when you go on a stage, you're dressed like a rock star, you act like a rock star, and you make everybody in the audience feel like a rock star. And that's so important to touch your audience. Because if you don't touch your audience in the first 5 minutes, you've lost them. You engage them immediately. You come out and you're bigger than life, and your attire is outrageously fabulous, and you get their attention the minute you enter that stage, and you start with your sticks and everybody's drumming. And I mean, Bruce, you have to experience it. It's really memorable.
Well,
And
I obviously had some videos and I got a little
yeah,
a preview of it. So let me ask you
fun.
this, Mark, what are some of the lessons that you've learned in your years of corporate speaking? Because I know before that you were an entertainer, and I think the big difference is that, you know, when you're a corporate speaker, you hope to them to leave a message that's relevant. And when I'm in entertainment, I just want to leave happy, right? You don't have to change me, just leave me happy, right? So, but what are sort of the big lessons you've learned, and what do you think companies can do better in terms of their format? And just to give you a sense of what I mean, because I've done a lot of public speaking, and one of the most absurd things I think, and I don't drum, okay, is that you have these
Not yet,
spotlights
not
on
yet.
you. Well, no, I drum all the time, just not on stage. Are you kidding? I'm one of your disciples. But my point is that you're blinded, right? You're talking in front of 1,000 people. I had the honor of speaking at the Apollo Theater last year. 1,200 people. I couldn't see one person. And it was a very personal thing related to somebody who died in September 11. I couldn't see anybody. What do we do? Do we have to you know, in your thing, it's a little different, right? But I would think that after that, you know, everybody wants to meet the rock star, go backstage, right? You're the rock star. How do you recommend bringing is the current format correct? Is it great to have a spotlight always in the eyes of the person who can't even then engage with the people? You have to pretend you're looking at people, or is there a format where we can be immersed in Marvelous Mark?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, because one of my presentations is entitled Unleashing Your Inner Rock Star. And that goes back to, your title about breaking down the silos or breaking down the barriers. One of the things that I do, besides, you go back to those lessons when you asked about the first part of the question, is, the first lesson I've always learned is to be bold and be different, like Kiss. In the 70s, all the other bands were just on stage in jeans and t-shirts, but Kiss wanted to set themselves so far apart from their competition that you couldn't help but remember them. And they did that with spandex makeup and a tongue implant. And they built an empire around their image. I mean, to date, Kiss has raked in over $500 million in licensing alone.
Yeah.
So they weren't just creating a band, they were creating a brand. And as a CEO or a VP of sales, or a person that's executive director of an association, that's what you want your people to do. You want to keep in mind your company brand, but your own personal brand, because nowadays the new buyers, the younger buyers, they're not just looking at websites, or if you're lucky to get FaceTime or phone time to build that relationship, they're looking at your social media. And I tell them, how are you building your personal brand to break down those barriers, to show the human side of yourself so that you'll be memorable? What is different on your social media, or what are you doing when you meet someone face to face that's going to make them remember you? That's one of the reasons why I've always kept the name Marvellous Mark. Many marketing people would tell me through the years, no, that's too crazy, or it's hokey, or people won't remember that. And when I did my own A/B testing, I'd say, would you remember Mark Kamp or remember Marvellous Mark? And I'm like, there's a gazillion Marks out there, but there's only one Marvellous Mark. I would remember that. So always,
Well,
always go
you can
left.
be two people. You can be Mark Kamp, the business consultant, because Mark Kamp speaks of the guy who works at EY, right? And Marvellous Mark tells another story. So let me ask you this, getting back to the whole format. What else is there a way that we can use Mark in a more personal way? Is there a way that we could tie, like, I love fishbowl approaches, town hall approaches, I love getting people together to solve problems, to and by the way, I think silos are one of the number one problems in every company. I've rarely run across and you can't. So I love the idea of hiring a Marvellous Mark to kick off, first off, the story, and then how do we bring Mark into the rest of the day to help people apply that new anthem of unity to breaking down silos between HR, sales, marketing, finance. The funny, dirty little secret is a lot of these people don't like each other, and no one ever talks about it, you know? But what if we're all singing the same song? And she knows that I am a huge believer in parties, and most people who know me go, "What, you?" But no, I think parties bring together, a good party brings together people like nothing else. And what is the unifying element? Music, right? And I love this. So my question to you is, what can I do after you've gotten off the stage? Is it you fly off onto your next gig, or can we bring Mark into the story and help people work it out during the day?
I have a couple. Go ahead, Jackie.
What I would like to say real quick is that when Mark also can go into the audience and form teams of people, with a group of people with him, and go to each table and, have people do pencil and paper and sit and interact with each other. Who's the rock star at your table? What makes you different? Tell us about your brand. Sell me. And they could go and they have to sell their brand at the table, and they have a spokesperson, and they find out who are the true rock stars at that table and who really need to be groomed to be a rock star. Because just because you're not a rock star doesn't mean you can't be one. And I think that on our last podcast, I talked about, Mark, half the people in the world don't even know their brand. They don't even know what the heck they're selling. Okay, I'm selling stickums. Well, what makes this stickum different than another stickum? Turn it up. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
you can elaborate. We have a few more minutes. So elaborate, because that really is the purpose of this whole meaningful meetings thing, because you can't do that on a Zoom, Mark.
Right.
what she just described. So tell me more about how, because look, you will know people love to hang out with a celebrity. They want to meet her. They want to meet him. They don't just want to see him on a stage. So, if I want to hire you, can I engage you to help throughout that day? Is that part of what you're willing to do, or is that really not what you do?
No, I have some secondary programs that I call creative jam sessions, and one is similar to a breakout format to where we get into smaller groups and we have more face time and kind of break down the message of the keynote experience. But part of that is getting them to think bigger, because most people, and that, they're again breaking down those barriers. If you have what I call the bud, the big unreasonable dream, then there's really no barrier because your bud is so far above that barrier. That's one way to break down those silos. And what Jaki was talking about, when I put them in their small mini bands, that is when they can determine each person's special skill. Because Jaki made mention that I incorporate Steve Jobs. Well, a lot of people don't realize this, but Steve Jobs' business model for Apple was the Beatles. And his quote is, they were four young guys who kept each other's negative tendencies in check. They balanced each other, and the total was greater than the sum of their parts. So, to tweak a little bit about what you said, Jaki, I believe that everyone is a rock star. They just don't necessarily know what their purpose is. And by breaking them into small bands or just small groups, you find out their strong points. And the unsung behind the scenes bass player can bring something to the table that the David Lee Roth or the Taylor Swift lead singer can't. And the rhythm section person, that is the worker bee, has to keep the melody on track and in rhythm. And then, your drummer usually is leadership, or that president or CEO that has to keep a good solid rhythm. You can't be all over the place, or your organization's going to be all over the place. So doing that deeper dive and finding out how to unleash your inner rock star is one program. And then I have a really fun a team building presentation called School of Business Rock Stars, to where we actually get them to compose a song about their company. And then they have to do like a battle of the bands and actually get up and perform that to help face those fears if they have the fear of stage, or it brings out the innovation and creativity. Some of the lyrics and some of the props that people come up with in these team building exercises will just blow your mind. And they're actually creating a company anthem. They're rewriting their company anthem.
Well, that was my last question, unless Jackie wanted to add something. Do you recommend, and I remember I started a couple of startups, and both of them developed their own anthem organically in the culture. Like, one of the young employees liked a fish song, I forget the name of it, but a really classic fish song, Got a Jaboo or something like that. Well, the song is really catchy, and it was a very fast-paced organization. All of a sudden, that became the organic anthem of the company. So my question to you is, would you recommend to companies even consider using a process like you developed to come up with an anthem? And you know what? Every year the anthem could be different, right? Because this year we have this challenge, right? We've got to go beat this competitor. And so there might be a different. Would you recommend doing that as a potential exercise?
I think it would be a great way to, you could have a contest within the company and have people make their suggestions on what they think the company's anthem is. And as a CEO or as a VP or director, that's going to give me feedback from my people on, like you said, some people don't even know what their anthem is. That's going to give me feedback as a leader of what my people, my band members, my audience, my fans think our company is. And is that in alignment with our mission statement, or do we need to tweak our 20-year-old mission statement to be more current with what our fans, or what our people, what our customers perceive ourselves of? So it's a great way to have a contest, give some sort of prize. And then, you see it in politics all over the time. Each politician has their own theme song that they walk up onto the stage. So they're using anthems to create memorable experience with their live rallies. So why wouldn't we do that in a corporate setting or in a meeting setting, or again, back to your own individual setting, your individual anthem?
You know what I love about this? First off, it's something I'd never thought about in all my years. So for me, it's an aha. But here's another thing. Think about this, and I'm not even kidding. Do you know that if Bud Light had done this exercise, right, they would have avoided an enormous unnecessary problem? Because guess what? If the New York guys, all and ladies, came up with a Velvet Underground song, right, the rest of the everybody said, no, 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 no. Velvet Underground is not Bud Light. I'm not even kidding. I think this process can help company understand its brand better. Or if nothing else, it can understand how the employees or the other stakeholders at that event view that brand. Because again, like a lot of companies, look, Jim Morrison, right? Light My Fire, one of the most amazing, the first lead, right? The first break that was, but you know what? For a lot of companies, I'm sorry, that isn't going to work. Music tells a story. So, Jaki, by the way, there's some big headlines in this event, folks. The article, we're going to post this in the next week or two on our YouTube channel. But most of all, we're going to publish an article for those of you who aren't patient with some of the key wisdoms here. And I think, Mark, Marvellous Mark, I think the really key wisdom is that with at least services like yours, we don't have to reinvent meetings because there are formats right now that you can employ that don't break the mold. You can still do what you did last year in a way, but in a way you've never done it before through music as a unifying force. So thank you so much. Jaki, do you have any last points or otherwise I'm going to thank you both
One of my
very much.
last points I just want to get in there is every time I'm pitching a client, Mark will create a custom video for them, or he'll offer when they hire him as a speaker to do a couple custom videos to say, hey, see you in Vegas. It's, Marvellous Mark, rocking out in Vegas. And he does this amazing energy video for people that the clients send it out to their attendees. And right away, they're like, who is that guy? I got to see that guy. And so they create the buzz. And that's so
You know
important.
what I love? And then if we use Mark's services and we create an anthem every year, the challenge is, hey, we're going to have a new anthem. Here's our, so look
Yeah.
forward to the event. We're gonna be talking about our mission, purpose, goals, and objectives, and we're gonna come up with it. And then throughout the year, when they go to the website, they hear the anthem, and the anthem is authentic and organic because it comes from its stakeholders. Mark, thank you really for enlightening me today, sir. And Jaki, as always, nice to see you.
Thank you,
And
Bruce.
folks, you'll have an opportunity to see this and read about it in the next week or so. Thanks again.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.